Thanks for coming this morning. I have a relatively brief statement, then I'll just be glad to take any questions that you may have. When I ran for mayor in 2007, I was very clear about the need for change in Philadelphia. I was not going to kick the can down the road on the huge structural budget issues facing this city and that have been facing the city for decades, namely the rising costs of pensions and health care costs for our city employees. These issues have become more and not less complicated because of the damage brought on by the Great Recession. We are a city with a large population living below the federal poverty level, and we have a high demand for city services that are delivered by talented, hardworking, dedicated, and committed public employees who deserve to be properly compensated for their work. From day one, as the mayor of this great city, I've talked about the need for balance and fairness. On the one hand, city employees do in fact deserve fairness in pay and benefits, and on the other hand, taxpayers of this city who carry an undeniably high tax burden, a burden that we are committed to reducing as much as possible. In the last 4 years, we have decreased the size of government, we've cut our spending, and in very careful ways reduced certain service levels, while at all times, protecting our most vulnerable citizens. We currently have a team of outside efficiency experts helping us to find ways to cut the cost of government even more and simultaneously increase our efficiency. I look forward to their report and to implementing many of their recommendations. On all of these issues, I've been very clear, and very straightforward, and very direct with the leaders of our 4 unions representing the bulk of our public employees. Using any reasonable measure or comparison with the public or private sector, city employees right now have, in fact, a very competitive compensation and benefits package. And when you factor in the fiscal realities of this city, the conclusion is only reinforced. In the summer of 2008, let me remind you, our administration achieved critically important 1-year contracts with police, fire, District Council 33, and District Council 47, something that had never been done before or anyone remembers in recent history. But by the fall of 2008, the bottom literally dropped out of our economy with massive bank failures, a collapsing economy, people losing their jobs or their homes, and businesses going out of business. I was deeply saddened to have to tell the city's non-represented and exempt employees who were in line through a long tradition to receive the same $1,100 bonus payment that our non-uniform union members had received earlier, that the city just could not afford to provide them with that same benefit that they would normally receive. In the months that followed, we were not able to convince some of our union leaders to accept the combination of proposed reform measures in pensions and health care that we believe are necessary to change the rising trajectory of employee benefits costs. More than 3 years later, the picture has not really changed. The contract terms that existed for union employees in 2009 remain in force. Stuck in the middle of all of this are the non-represented and exempt employees who have been without a raise since the summer of 2007 and who saw their step and longevity increments frozen since July 1, 2009. As we struggle past the impact of the Great Recession, I have concluded that it is time to help those that we can help directly. It's time to take action now. But we are doing so in an approach that directly links increased pay with the need still for structural reform in the areas of pension and health care, something that we've been talking about now for more than 5 years, and something that we've specifically offered to the union leaders of both District Councils 33 and 47. We need to turn this great city in a new direction, toward a sustainable fiscal future, where the rising employee compensation and benefits package costs are more in line with the reality of what our city taxpayers can afford, where employees are more personally invested in their health care and their retirement planning. The new compensation benefits reform package we're announcing today is for approximately 5,500 city employees, from the non-represented and exempt employees to the first-level supervisors in Local 2186 of AFSCME District Council 47. Instead of going through a point-by-point description of the package, I know that just about all of you have received a release and other information a little while ago. And so let me just open up now for any questions that you might have.
Mayor, what's the message to 33 and 47 over this? I mean, you're giving the non-represented, the exempt employees a raise, and it seems like you're trying to light the fire under 33 and 47 and make people.
We remain committed to the traditional collective bargaining process. I respect that process. I think I've made that very clear. In the meantime, these are employees who, by definition, are not represented. They have no one else to speak up for them but us, but me. And so we're taking action to help them. These are employees who have given, quite frankly, the most. Many of them have had their pay cut, furloughs, and have not received raises over a long period of time. I look forward to continuing negotiations with both the leaders of DC 33 and 47, but we need to take action now for those that we can.
Mayor, the chief of staff yesterday said that you were not ready to declare an impasse in those talks, but how would you characterize the talks and how close are you likely to declaring it?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on the future, nor am I going to get into the deeper details of our negotiations. I will say to you that we stay in regular contact with both leaders of DC 33 and 47. I remain hopeful that we can conclude those negotiations in a relatively soon time period. But let me restate what I've said a number of times in the past. I want fair, multi-year contracts with our public employees that include raises for them as well as the needed reforms that I've talked about and that we have discussed with them across the table, in pensions, in health care, in work rules, and certainly how we manage employees through the use of strategic furloughs. I'm sure that there are a couple other provisions that we're in discussions about, but those four are critically important to moving forward and have to be a part of a package, again, including raises, that we can afford. That's the issue here, and that's the only issue here. Fair to the employees, fair to the public.
Rolling out these changes to the non-represented in this very public way meant to increase the pressure on 3347 to accept similar packages?
No, it's meant to communicate the information, and one of the components here in terms of asking, requesting, needing increased contribution to the pension fund, for instance, for current employees and seeking to put new employees into a different plan is a legislative matter. That will be very public. And so if I did this another way, we would be at some other press conference and you would be asking me why we didn't make a public announcement. So we're making a public announcement.
Mayor, may I ask you, this may sound like a softball, which is uncharacteristic, but do you consider it a bragging right that, well, New York or Chicago and other big cities have had to lay off cops and things like that you managed to avoid doing that? Is that something that, does the union ever say anything about that and recognizing that, or as talks go back and forth as it's communicated to you?
Well, I'm not one much for bragging, quite frankly, Vernon. It is something that I talk about. It is something that is actually recognized by many other cities and mayors across the United States of America. People have looked at Philadelphia, have asked me on numerous occasions, how we were able to do some things very differently than some other cities. So I'm not criticizing any of those cities or even speculating on their circumstance. Every city is different. Every circumstance is different. We made a very conscious decision early on that we were not going to close the initial $1 billion 5-year deficit, which was announced back in November, 2 days after the election in 2008, and try to close that, or the subsequent $1.4 billion deficit that we announced in January of 2009, that we were not going to solve a $2.4 billion 5-year plan problem on the backs of our public employees. We worked very closely, quite honestly, with union leadership to see where there were opportunities with a number of vacancies that were already in the government to save those employees from being laid off. And so I would only say it is a point of pride for this city that we have not laid off one police officer, not one firefighter, not one sanitation worker, or one social worker in this government as a result of the worst recession since the Great Depression. We took a balanced approach. We took a shared sacrifice approach. We cut services strategically, and yes, we did raise taxes. Now, we've been criticized for both, but in the meantime, our goal was to make sure that vulnerable populations were not negatively affected, that we could actually run the government, provide high-quality service, and that one day, when the recession either ended or was starting to end, that we would not so damage the integrity and the functionality of our city government that we wouldn't be able to move forward. We've done that and brought some level of financial stability to our city government without throwing thousands of public employees out in the street.
Are you prepared to say that to close this deal and potentially something similar with 33 and 47, that you will need a tax increase again next spring? Can you kind of categorically guarantee that?
Well, if your first question was a softball, you definitely came back with the high inside 98 mile an hour. I mean, that's like a knuckleball. Jeez.
You brought up taxes. I didn't. You left go.
Well, first, you know me well enough to know that I'm not going to negotiate or speculate about anything related to our discussions with either DC 33 or 47. I've walked into every year that I've been here not wanting to raise taxes, and that's not even been a topic of conversation in recent times. Budget calls will be going out very shortly, but it's not even a topic of discussion at the moment.
Mayor, you
So
pointed out...
you're not willing to rule it out categorically to close these deals?
I have no expectation. I mean, when you think about what things that we've done in the past related to taxes, earlier this year we took very strong action in coordination with City Council. That was for public education. We've done other things to just maintain city services, but I'm not anticipating doing anything directly related to contract provisions. But again, it's hard to speculate on something that has not happened. I'd love to have deals in hand, and then I'd be in a better position to be responsive. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, you pointed out pension reform as critical. Would you say it's the most critical out of all of them? Compared to healthcare costs?
Pension and healthcare costs are really, I mean, the four that I've articulated are all critically important. They are weaved together in a way that help us significantly. I'm sure you know that somewhere in another year or so, we'll be faced with about 25% of our budget going directly to pension and healthcare costs. That's before we open one rec center, pick up a bag of trash, put an officer on the streets, or do any of the other great things that our public servants do. 25% right off of the top. That's not sustainable for a pension fund that's also less than 50% funded. I mean, these are just the kind of graphic realities of what we're facing. But all four of those items are critical for us in terms of either efficiency or saving money in order to provide high-quality service. Pensions, health care, furloughs, and overtime. overtime calculation.
Mayor, to what degree does this package represent what the administration has on the table for 3337? Are you offering fairly similar or identical?
It is certainly fairly similar. There are probably some discernible distinctions. These employees are in a particular group, technically not really in a group, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of similarity between these provisions and what we've discussed many, many times with both DC 33 and DC 47. Last question?
Mayor, how many of the employees, please?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
500 employees, how many actually get overtime?
I can get back to you on that. I have no idea.
The furlough language with respect to these 5,500, is there any duration, any limit set on how long those furloughs could be in a given year? 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
No. The proposal is just to seek to authorize through civil service changes the authority to furlough. And then we'll manage the workforce in a way that makes some sense.
With respect to City Council approval of the pension changes, I understand that their approval would be required for Plan 10 to be made mandatory for these employees.
For new hires in those categories.
Where does that stand? Do you understand that Council supports this language, or have they currently or in the past expressed any hesitation about it?
It's been a topic of conversation for actually the last couple of years. As you well know, as is my longstanding policy, I do not ever attempt to predict what might happen in our legislative body, but I've had a number of conversations with different members who I think, A, understand the issue, and B, it'll be the same subject of discussion, hopefully hearing and further discussion like any other piece of legislation. But adjustments to the pension system can only be implemented by ordinance. It is something that's important. We think that these employees, the new employees, should be in that plan. And again, a little bit of self-interest here, I think, for all the public employees. If you're in a plan that's less than 50% funded, you want to help ensure that it is at least a little more fiscally sound as time moves on. Pension is very important for all of our public employees. Thank you all very much.